Hi everyone, welcome to Tula Hub's podcast. I'm here with Lord Ganesh and the elder tree or the mother tree, whichever terminology you prefer, you feel more in resonance with. Either way, it is the same tree, that beautiful Angophora costata, who reached out literally and decided to share some of the wisdom of how the ecosystem that it presides within, which is a coastal forest here in Australia on the east coast, and just how the connectivity spans. It's because there's no such thing as distance in the scheme of things, that it can communicate throughout. But it's also connected to the ocean. So even though it's a coastal forest and there is obviously the ocean not too far from where this forest is, whether it would be further away, which would be obviously different terminology of what it was called, it can still resonate with all of nature, and that includes people, because people are part of the ecosystem and a valuable part from nature's perspective. And I think sometimes it's easy to forget that. It's easy to forget that nature is, or not even realize it, that nature is very cognitive, it's very conscious, and it's a sentient being in itself. So throughout the ages, you've had different philosophies that have been sharing this wisdom. Some have been oppressed and suppressed. Others have been gently meandering through other understandings, just signaling that message of connectivity, but also cognitive remembrance. And that's a really incredible insight and understanding that the presence of that knowledge is all-pervading. In other words, it's always been present for anyone who wanted to tune in and tap into that. I think life has been so busy for so many of us for so long, and we become very narrow in our constructs and concept. Not everyone, but through different times in our life, no matter how expanded we feel we are, we can narrow in our cognitive awareness until we breathe in life, more of that light and life itself, which is not separate, and then allow the expansion through your awareness and open up your throat center. So that's really important, so you can articulate what is your resonance in your own expansion. Truth is a funny thing, because as your perceptions shift and open up, then your truth expands with that. But not everyone wants to. But for us here in Tallulah Hub, and those that we collaborate with and globally share with and cosmically share with, because for us we're all of that and so much more, as are many of you who found us here in Tallulah Hub, previously Rising Mountain, previously Simply Blooming. It's a funny thing, because in this world with businesses and things, you have a name and you become branded. For us, because we're always attuning to different frequencies consciously, then the names have all meant something along the way as we've shifted and grown and expanded, and also in the presence of existence, being able to articulate things that once upon a time we wouldn't be able to, because it would just be too much of a reality check for a global consciousness. But that has blown out of the water, because you've got so many light beings that have come in. You've got on social media, you've got all these different resonance of star-seated beings, and people are more likely just to say where they're coming from, regardless of what people think, which is a huge milestone in existence, because all too often we worry about what others think of us. And I think no matter who you are, you're not really ever immune to that. I know when, because people have different constructs of what Lord Ganesh is, what Lord Shiva is, and Gautama Buddha, and so many beings, all those who've come before Jesus, all those, amazing beings that have, walked the earth, been part of the earth, still are in every way, but they're constantly oscillating, and so they're visible to some and not visible to others. So, we're like this big, huge family, friends, and it's exciting, but people have belief systems around each, whether it's a deity or, or a Buddhist, like with Gautama, or whatever label has been given to them by people. The actual beings themselves are their own cosmic entity, and a label doesn't serve, them in any way when it's limited. So we're funny with labels, because I've always shared that even though I work in the field with plants, and the expectation is always know your botany, know those botanical names. And there's a reason for that, because globally it's a way of mapping and sharing what plants are in different parts of the world. But also when it's a common name, those common names are also labelled all different plants. In Australia, you've got common names that are different species in the botanical world, or botanical sense. Sometimes it's considered a weed, although a weed is just a plant out of place. And then who says it's out of place? People tend to say that. Does nature say that? Well, you'd have to ask them directly. But it's just those labels. So even with botany, well, I know some of the labels. There's like millions of plants. I definitely would never remember every single botany name or botanical name. And the names themselves are changing, because as we've shared so many times in our podcast, the taxonomy of that, there's more research, they find out more. And I think that what's wonderful about that is the awareness that it's so important to whatever you think you know in this now moment, to be open to learning and understanding and knowing more, because what you know in one moment will be different the next moment, because you've grown. Once you've lived that moment, you've lived it, it's gone, you've done and dusted, and you're on to the next moment. So that's why it's really helpful to flow through the air element into the ether, which is space, and constantly let go of all that you think you are, and allow more of what you are in the moment that you require that knowledge to just simply show up in your life, because that's how you keep growing. That's how you alleviate any stressor, because often in life, and most of us can resonate this in some frequency, if we've had an experience that's been really disruptive, those curveballs in life, if you stay stuck on that, that's in your memory banks, and it keeps percolating over and over again, and it negates that feeling of being present and open to opportunities that are showing up in your life right here, right now, because your memory banks are churning over the trauma or the upset that occurred at some past moment, and so it's keeping you there. Whereas when you show up refreshed, renewed, regenerated, open to infinite possibilities that you can bring into your life that are fruitful beyond what you can imagine, then you're open to experience those in the now moment. But if something is holding on that has been turbulent, or you've just got upset over, then you're not there and being ready to experience the magic of your life moving forward. So sometimes those experiences like curveballs can make you stronger within yourself. The universe doesn't dictate what learning things you've got to learn. It's not like that. It's not a school in that way. We show up and we're here to experience life in its fullness. And if something isn't going the way you want, then it's coming back into that awareness of being in that moment, and then feeling the clarity rise up within you to hear what your inner being has to say about it. Because sometimes it'll say, let's just move through this gently. Sometimes say, not long now. In other words, whatever's going on that doesn't feel so good, you're moving on and out of that. So definitely let go as it moves on and out. Keep letting go, let go, let go. And the easiest way to let go, and the most naturally occurring way within a physiological state, is to breathe. And so often we hold our breath. And, I've definitely done it when I work in a very fast-paced environment, when I'm not immersed in what we're doing here in Tallulah Hub. And so, your thinking process is really important that you let go of that and just be present, because otherwise your mind is reeling and you can't think clearly, and that's when things, get messed up. Nothing is ever too bad, or bad at all. It's just something you then come back to yourself, breathe again, realign, and off you go again. And you feel lighter, the burden isn't there, and, you're not feeling the weight on your back and your shoulders and your neck, So all those things can be a nanosecond flow, through the simple art of breathing. And every single person has a signature rhythmic breath. So even though there's wonderful teachers out there teaching you how to breathe, and one of the things that Shiva taught me with pranayama is, if you're not sure what that is, just Google, but pranayama, there's very different techniques within the pranayama breath. But one of the things he always reminded me of, every pranayama is unique to each person. You have your own pranayama technique that is natural to you. It's not something you learn outside of you. It's something that's very deep within your heart center that will signal and impulse how that flows within you if you just ask, But we don't. We put our wisdom outside and outsource ourselves all the time. And something that Ganesh and Shiva and the gang always remind people of, that while you can ask someone for some guidance outside of you, before you do that, always touch base with who you are from within, and then feel the earthing of that, and then see how you feel about the art of inquiry outside of you, because you are all cosmically, centered in your epicenter. It's just there's this constant separation over and over again throughout your daily nanosecond flow, and we forget. We get busy, life gets a bit stressful, worries come on board, or maybe you've just got a lot of parties happening, you've got travel plans, you've got new jobs to get, study to do, exams to do, all of those things that life, sends you. But I think no matter what that is, if you can feel the joy in any of that, then it diffuses any stressor or any worry about, am I making the right move? Is this the next step? Whether it's refinancing your mortgage or applying for one, or, And, the other thing that we wanted to touch base with, if you get a knockback, when someone, you've applied for something or something's happened that you've really wanted and you get knocked back on that, a lot of people get really disillusioned and a little bit sad, a little bit down, but there's an opportunity there to reassess where you're coming from with it and really decide what you want to achieve, and not put yourself in the hands of others. So if someone says you can't do something, touch base inside of you and really feel if that's your truth, because your truth is more than likely going to say you can be anything, do anything, you are everything, you are anything that you've chosen to be. So whatever that is, you can keep moving forward, or if you want to change what that is, you can do that too, you can be that too. But we don't often listen to that inner sound. That trust isn't always present in the way that you value it. And a value system is really ethical. Valuing who you are is really important in a world that constantly pulls at you energetically all the time, because, there's many reasons. One, our economy is based on that until it's not. So there's a lot of people that are deciding to get off that treadmill, really feel that whatever's going on in their life is just not the way they choose to live. So they're doing steps, sometimes baby steps, sometimes leapfrogging, sometimes diving all the way in and just letting go. It's different for different people. You have to find your way when you're ready. But they're making those steps towards that freedom that they desire to have, whether it's a combination of financial freedom, home status, kind of lifestyle they want to live, job-wise, family-wise, all those sorts of things, any of those things and more. Or just the freedom to be able to speak your truth, whether you want to say I'm from the Pleiades, or I want to say I'm from WA, or say I'm from California, or, it doesn't matter what it is, but feeling at ease and having that self-acceptance really, really helps. And so the mother tree, or the elder tree, the Angophora castata that I was sharing with you, that is the one that narrates with us, who's the energy is present with me here, even though I'm not sitting in the forest creating this podcast, we're collaborating because our energy is connected. I think one of the magical things when it calls me to come into the forest, and it's got this excitement of saying, just come in, and won't say what it's got to share until I arrive. And then I'll just be drawn to these meandering paths and off the path and onto a different section where it's not really walked upon that much. And I'll come across a flower, The other day it was the bearded orchid. It was just a one-off, and I went back there the week later and it was gone, so it was just an instant. But the joy I could feel from this elder tree, the mother tree, of being excited to show me what's in its ecosystem, what's in it, its friends. It was next level. It was just this absolute teary-eyed joy. It was just that emotional connection, and emotions are beautiful. We're very fortunate we can feel and sense and through our emotional body. It's a gift, sometimes it's not accepted in our world, but it's a gift, especially when you really connect. Your eyes naturally water, and water's the elixir of life. We require it. The fire element is also a regenerator, rejuvenator. It's a destroyer, but that's only so things can thrive in the context that it naturally occurs, and that includes within our physical form. You've got your digestive juices, which are the fire within that helps digest our food and everything that we take in, but the water also cleanses and washes things through. So there's so much. The air purifies as well. Our ether allows ourselves to be spacious within our being and our radiance, so there's a calmingness to that and an expansiveness to that. And the earth helps ground us when we've got some constructs and ideas and resonances. We want to ground that and walk the path of that eternal self. In where I am, people always ask, how old I am or, what age I am. And, inside myself, I have no answer. None whatsoever. I know a lot of you would resonate with that, but a lot of you will say, it'll just be spontaneous. You always say that. And they'll ask me, when's your date of birth? Or when's your birthday? And I'll go really quiet, like this is void inside the self. It's just this nothingness of the abyss in a most beautiful sacred sense. And I have no response to it. And in a world that demands that kind of thing, it's an interesting experience. And I'll always say, well, every day I'm birthing. So, and I had someone the other day say to me, well, you can't have a cake every day, Isis. And I thought, oh, I can, really. I can. I don't want one, by the way, but I can. But what that's really saying is that life to us, in every moment, you're birthing something. It's exciting, it's exhilarating, and it gives you the opportunity to move through something. Like at the moment, we're finishing off a mini ebook with the elder tree, the mother tree, just about the joy and the magic of the world. And the world is full of magic, that energy that is interesting and inspiring and whimsical, but grounded, like really grounded. Every time I feel this coastal forest is very magical. As soon as I get out of the car, start to go for a walk, I can just feel the energy cocoon, it just envelopes me. And I feel really blessed. I feel really fortunate and I feel the playfulness comes out, it's so playful. And, and when the mother tree, because, as I shared in the last few podcasts, I didn't know which tree it was exactly because there's many elder trees in this forest. And when it showed me who it was, and the first thing it asked me was, am I what you expected? That was a great question because I thought, I don't know what I expected, Did I expect that the half its limbs at the lower limb that was massive had been, broken off? And it would have been a huge limb because it's a gaping big chasm of a gap, yet it's still thriving. And that's the other thing, things can be wounded but heal and still thrive. And then so it made me think, well, what did I think? I don't think I thought it was a Niglopha. I don't know what type of tree it was. I'm happy with all trees. But then when it shared a few times later, this is my friend, and the cabbage tree palm was next to it. And I've shared some photos in Substack and in Patreon and, and on a blog page. But there's this beautiful cabbage tree palm right next door. They're touching each other, and you could actually feel the camaraderie. Like you could feel the energy smiling back at you. Like it was just, that's magic, right? Like it's magical. It's real. Magic is real. And just, you could feel the joy emanate. And it's interesting, as I shared in the last podcast, which we did yesterday, we tend to do clusters and then nothing for a while. And Tira had shared something on Instagram where this band has created the instruments to wire up whether it's the fungi or the birch tree in this case, and they can hear. So when that all first started and someone could start to do that, the technology actually was changing the sounds, just by the way, the technology was set up. But it was funny because this time around, the birch tree that was the one that spoke to me about its experience, and it's in the timelessness, it's not on a time frame. the delight it felt at hearing its own sound in a different way to how it emanates, and some people can hear the sounds of nature beyond, you can hear a bird call, but there's a deeper sound in that, which is where I come from. I can hear the inner sound of nature, and I can hear the outer sound, which is the bird calls. Like we use a bird call that I recorded in one of our hiking trips. But there's a sound within a sound, within a sound, within a sound. And it's the same with human beings. You've got these levels of frequencies and patterns, the tapestries of light that emanate from you. But it's just fascinating. But just to hear the joy of this, and then the fungi. There was one this band did with fungi, and it was hysterical. Like you can hear the sounds that it's making, but then if you come into where we come from within the inner sound, it was like giggling. Like it was giggling that it thought it was like having fun with hearing the way it was being heard. So it wasn't its inner sound that you were hearing, but it was a sound that it could recognize of itself, and it was laughing because it could hear itself in a different way to what it knows of itself, but it hear a sound that it was enjoying the connection, the collaboration with the human beings. And I think that's, it's what we've come from the very beginning when our first walk-in experience happened, or years ago. And now we have the joy of hearing what other people are realizing and making happen, like by manifesting ways that others can also get an understanding until they're ready to tune in within their inner vortex. And so what a great time to be alive, what a great time in this world within the timelessness to be able to hear all those things. Or in Substack, there's the most beautiful platform for people who love to write and share, and you get this beautiful community that's risen up where people just are open to experiencing what other people are sharing. It's such a beautiful community, it's really untainted by the different types of algorithms that get that occur in other platforms, and we're not saying it doesn't have them, but the community itself is just the most beautiful community. And our Patreon community just absolutely exquisite. So we're very fortunate that we have these areas of coming together where no matter where we're coming from within our value system, within who we are, you just you meet and greet people and hear how they share their journey, they share their stories. And bringing it back to the elder tree as it's nudging me here, the wind song, the elder tree first shared the story of its first tapestry of light within the first Indigenous person here in Australia that recorded through telepathy. It's the wind song. And then that story in Indigenous cultures was passed through, It's more difficult, I think, for those stories to be shared because it's so, our cultures are so fragmented. But the enlivening energy of that has sown its seed once again. And so you're getting that more and more and more. And people are now desiring to come from that understanding, let go and dissolve those barriers to connecting to nature in such a beautiful symbiotic relationship and sharing the joy. You've got so many people that are, out there campaigning and sharing in a non-violent way just the joy and the gift that nature gives us unconditionally. It doesn't cost you anything other than being open. And, nature cleans our air for free. And I think we can learn a lot from that with a circular economy. We are a mass population that's growing, billions of people. We have an economy that we can change. A monetary-based economy doesn't work for everyone. In fact, it's quite stressful for most people. People are waiting for the next home loan decrease or rise or whatever's happening, the worry of the heavy mortgage, the worry of having shelter. Yet nature provides shelter for its inhabitants always. So how did we become so separate from that understanding and create such a linear construct of economy? So our work in Tallulah Hub is not only helping shift the methodology of how we shape our economical affairs, but to recognize within each one of us and hopefully inspire to question how we set up our economy and re-empower ourselves to change the economy structurally, because we vote people in They decide what they're going to, they do their campaigns like anything, even how we run our businesses, all that. And what the governing bodies then narrate to us is what the benchmark we have to follow. But people, there are billions of people. There's only a few in those positions that we tend to nominate in. We can be the change through harmony by making those changes. And a lot of people are doing it. You've got in workshops, people come together and help people extend their homes or build their homes. You've got people who will help send up sustainable renewable energy systems within, whether it's a suburb or a community. It's about working together and collaborating in harmony, and it's some would say that's a utopian philosophy, but actually where we come from and where we've always come from, that is already in existence. It's still connecting in fiber optic nerve frame of references in this world, but it's definitely something that is on par and happening in this world. And communities like the setting up of Substack, which people are sharing, communities they're voicing if they've got a query or they've got something they have to say, it's said in such a non-violent but very methodical, very precise way that is just kind. And if we have more of that kind of economy, then the world shifts its demographic into a conscious, co-creating, harmonic resonance that understands that nature is also us, and our sattvic nature is one that allows nature to thrive because it gives us not only the mirroring of our infinite possibilities of creating a circular system, so everything becomes biodegradable. We don't get landfill like we've got at the moment that's building there's farms of wasted clothing. You've got companies that are now, you can take your clothes back, they can re-yarn them, they de-thread them and then calibrate the molecules and repurpose the fabric, and we need more of that. So getting on board with those companies that are doing that and helping other companies set that up. There was a beautiful designer, I think they're in the UK, I'm not sure, so don't quote me on that. And her whole business was based, she had curtains that were growing. It was really funny. So when she first put the curtains up, they were above the skirting board, which is the board that goes at the bottom, on a wall. And gradually over time, they were growing below the skirting board. So the thing is, we have the ability to be this. We have the technology, because nature is our mirror of that technology. It is totally sublime in how it creates, and it's very cognitively aware, and it knows us. It knows us sometimes better than we recognize it, because we've always put it in a category, and not recognize it's a sentient being in itself. But it itself acknowledges us as fellow sentient beings, which is a fascinating way to see things. And there's great people doing, like the David Attenborough who created the film with others, Oceans, seeing what we're doing that's just destructive and how we can change the way that still supports the people for their economy, but change the way we go about it. So our fisheries in our oceans are still thriving, and so the predator species can still be fed on what the natural food source is, and so it goes on. There are so many ways to really recalibrate ourselves and bring it back to those basics. Our garbage system. So on your own property, having a system, apartment buildings. Here in Australia, apartment buildings are going off everywhere. They're just going up too many high rises, and they're not necessarily designed in a way for passive design at all. Windows are peering into other people's bathrooms. There's just the walls are too thin, and so it goes on. And they don't have the composting system. So you think how much food we waste. Where does it go? It goes into the bins, and then where does it go? If we were able to put composting systems into those places where those apartments are being built, to cater, enough of it to cater for the amount of people that would be dwelling in those buildings. Rainwater tanks, making sure that those buildings are able to harvest the water and filter it through back into, hopefully, gardens in that area, and not just have the token gesture garden. Create the verges, create the infrastructure of green space all the way through. So around the world, there are some designers and developers that are doing that, and some governing bodies are getting on board with that. but more is required, and even changing the shapes that we're doing and using the tapestries and the patterns within nature, because those patterns are healthy for the human being as well. But we straight up and down buildings. So I know with the small place that we're building, it's just a couple of years away, but we're certainly in the process of designing it. It's, I love curves. So what I want to do is I'll curve the deck instead of curving the building, just because structurally for what we're doing, this works. However, if I curve the building and meander that, and then when the time comes, do the desert stoat pea pod, it'll create this beautiful infrastructure that will have green space connecting the two areas. And one of the things I said to one of the co-designers was, when I'm inside, I need to feel like I'm outside, because even though it's cold where we're building in a couple of years' time, but I need to feel like when I am inside and it's just too wet and cold to go outside, which I probably still will anyway, I need to feel that I'm still outside. So everywhere you look, you can see outside, which is, all these beautiful ecosystems. And we'll be revegetating the area and hopefully bringing back the billabong and that sort of thing. It's so important. We would also say, why destroy it in the first place? So where we are, that had already been cleared. We're just working with nature to reseed it and revegetate. So we always advocate for the non-destruction of our natural vegetation, because even though our population is changing and growing, you can still keep the majority of that vegetation and build around and through it, because we have so much talent in this world when it comes to design and passive design and cost effectiveness. When so many people come together, the costs can be brought down, So coming together as a community is so important. And this is one of the things that the elder mother tree here is sharing. In its ecosystem, it works in a collaboration. Everything sends out signals to each other. So when something is passing, it moves into that ecosystem at a deeper level, works with the mycorrhizal, and then provides the nutrients and is rebirthed into another form, whatever that is. And, our cells in our human form are always doing that. They're breaking down, new cells are coming through. So when you're regenerating, your cells are regenerating, being happy really is prime, because your cells are regenerating at a healthy state. So tuning into yourself, feeling where you're flowing, feeling where you're clogging, really helps you move through your life in a very effortless, mindful way, which is exciting and it's empowering. That's the one thing that the Mother Tree is always saying. When a human being is empowered through its sentience awareness, life shifts dramatically in a very co-creative, symbiotic flow. And that's, if you can remember anything from this podcast, is that one narrative that it just shared, and that's how it wants to end this podcast. So thank you, Loganesh. Thank you, Mother Tree, Elder Tree. Thank you to the coastal forest that opens itself up to this experience and wanted to share its journey and the joy of what it is to be in a symbiotic relationship, and to play, laugh, dance and sing always within. Namaste from all of us here in Tallulah Hub. Bye for now.